Good morning and welcome to another Child of the Week Assembly. Today we're going to be thinking a little bit about problems and solving them. But before we do, we say our liturgy together. In the beginning, when God created all things, he said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Let your light shine. God is light, and in him there is no darkness. Let your light shine. Jesus said, "I am the light of the world. Let your light shine." So back to our problems and solving them. We all have problems each day. We may not realise it, but in some ways problems are also choices that we have to make. Every time we make a choice, in a sense, we are solving a problem. What are we going to have for breakfast? Whether we're going to go and play with one friend or another. Maybe it's a bit extreme to think about those as problems, but think about what you might choose for breakfast and imagine the consequences of choosing an unhealthy breakfast. That would cause you a problem, or maybe never cleaning your teeth. So those problems that we have, they come in all shapes and sizes. And this week, we're going to think about how we can solve them. And we're going to consider the story of Nehemiah. He was a Jewish man in the Bible. And what's interesting is that he was a man who was a friend of God. We've thought at the beginning in our liturgy about how we light a candle and we remember that God's with us. And when we've got problems, we can share those with God and he will help us with them. But back to the story of Nehemiah. And I'm going to read you a story. The story is called A Time to Build. My people have learned their lesson, God decided. It's time for them to come home. The people of Israel had been in exile. That means that they had been sent away from their home. It was time for them to come back. So God whispered in the ear of Cyrus, the king of the country, where God's people were slaves, and he said, "Send them home." So Cyrus did, and thousands of people returned to Jerusalem. There was a lot of work to do when they got there, rebuilding their houses so they had somewhere to live, rebuilding the temple so they had somewhere to worship God, rebuilding the walls around Jerusalem so they had somewhere to hide from their enemies. It was hard work, and they had no end of problems. And for a time, it looked like it would never get done. And then Cyrus died, and another king with a name Artaxerxes, that's a funny name, isn't it? Artaxerxes gave me a problem trying to say that. He took his place. And God took the chance to help his people by whispering in the ear of a man who could get that man's attention. The man's name was Nehemiah. Now, Nehemiah's job was to bring the king his wine every day. He tasted it first to make sure that nobody had put any poison in it. The king trusted him very much and was puzzled one day when Nehemiah came, cup in hand, but with a sad frown on his face. "What's the matter, Nehemiah?" the king asked. "Why do you look so sad?" Nehemiah whispered a prayer to God, asking for his help before he answered. "Forgive me, Your Majesty," he begged. "I know it's my duty to smile in your presence, but I cannot. I've heard my people are suffering in their homeland. The walls of Jerusalem are broken, and I know that I could help if only I could go and join them. I know also that you've got wood and stone, which would make their job so much easier and would allow me to build a house so that I could stay there while I helped them. Please send me there with the supplies to finish the job and to bring an end to my people's suffering. Well, King Artaxerxes, he thought long and hard. Yes, Nehemiah, he answered, you may go. And let me send you some of my soldiers along the way to protect you. It was a long journey. Nehemiah thanked the king, and he thanked God too, and set off on the long journey. When Nehemiah arrived, he found Jerusalem in a terrible state, but the people were pleased to see him. Let's build up these walls, he encouraged them, for God is with us. He gave me courage to speak to the king. He persuaded the king to give us these supplies. And now God will help us to finish the job. Well, you're going to find out a little bit more about how Nehemiah got on rebuilding the city of Jerusalem throughout this week. The example of Nehemiah can help us when we are trying to solve problems. One step at a time. I wonder if you've heard that before. It's about breaking problems down into smaller bits, not trying to solve the whole thing at once, but just taking it little by little. Well, firstly, Nehemiah had to know what the problem was, and he did. It was the city of Jerusalem in ruins. So before we can think about possible solutions, we need to know what the problem is that we're facing. If you know what a problem is, then you can start thinking about ways that you might solve it. I've got some examples here. Got a really hard problem. Break it down into bits. Makes it easier. And then that's even easier when it goes into smaller steps. It's another example. Trying to think what to do. Maybe it's writing a story. Why, when, how, what, where, who. You might know of those as the 5 W's plus how. Well, Nehemiah wanted to rebuild the city. His first task was to get to Jerusalem. The second task was building somewhere for him to live while he helped the people. He began to break down his big problem into smaller problems. And he asked the king, didn't he, to help him to solve 2 of the smaller problems, how he'd get to the city safely and how he'd build a house. Nehemiah realized that if he was going to take on a huge task of building a city, he would need to do it one step at a time. So breaking down a problem into smaller chunks can help that big problem not seem so big. I bet some of you know about maths problems already, and your teachers will do those small steps to help you to take a little bit at a time. We do reasoning and problem solving, and you really need to know what is the problem and then take it little by little as you understand what needs to be done. And maybe in English, you're writing a story. You could just start writing and see where it takes you. But if you have a story map, you think about the character, the settings, the beginning, the middle, and the end. Then it helps you to plan it, makes it much easier. And maybe you have a problem with your friends. Maybe a friend isn't talking to you. You could find out what's the matter. Why are they ignoring you? And if it's something that you've done or said, then you can say sorry. I like this picture. This little girl saying, I'm sorry, and this other one saying, it's okay. You learn how to fix those problems. So time to reflect. Can you remember what was Nehemiah's main problem? It's very big. All about rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. Such a big problem. I wonder if you have faced any problems recently. How did you solve them? Did you solve them by yourself? Did others help you? Did you break them down into little bits? There's a saying that a problem shared is a problem halved. And maybe if you've got a problem at the moment, you might want to share that with somebody. Share your concern and see if they can help you. Don't want anybody to be going through the day with a problem that's weighing them down, that's making them worried. There's lots of people around in your classroom, your teacher, your LSA, other people that you can go and speak to who are trusted, who will help you. Let's just take a moment to be quiet and to think about whether we need to share a problem to help us get through it. I'm going to say a prayer. If you want to agree, you can say Amen at the end. Dear God, we know that we come across problems of many kinds. Some will be easy to solve. Others will take more time and effort and thought. Help us today never to think that a problem is bigger than it is, and help us to realise that we've got many people around us who have the skills to overcome almost any problem. And I want to say that God is with us, and he will listen to us if we share our problem with him and help us. Amen. And let's say together the Lord's Prayer. We address God as our Father, the one who is there to help us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. We're going to move on now to our Child of the Week celebration. And I want to say a very big thank you to Miss Crofts this week, who helped me with the problem, because some of you will know that Mrs. Freshwater hasn't been around, and she always collects all the names for me for Child of the Week Assembly. And Miss Crofts was really kind, and she realised it would be a problem for me, so she offered to do it. So thank you, Miss Crofts. So in year 1, for Miss Marsden, she's chosen Jasvina as her Child of the Week. And Miss Berman has chosen Brandon. Well done to both of you. In year 2, Ollie is the Child of the Week for Miss Franklin, and Storm is Child of the Week for Miss Jakes and Mrs. Walker. In year 3, Mrs. Epps and Mrs. Poole have chosen Lamara, and Amelie is the Child of the Week for Miss Crofts. Moving into year 4, Mr. Fev has chosen Carmen, And Mr. Wright has chosen Poppy. Well done to both of you. In year 5, William is the Child of the Week for Mr. Boyer, and Ben is Child of the Week for Mrs. O'Donnell. Lastly, we've got Alfie, who's been chosen by Mr. Niall, and Ryan, who has been chosen by Miss Greenhill. So well done to all of you who've shone your lights brightly and been chosen as our Child of the Week. And I look forward to coming around later on and to giving you your certificates. And I remembered this week to say our last slide together. Reverend Andrew reminded me of it on Friday, so I didn't forget. We say, go in the light and peace of Jesus. In the name of Christ. Amen.